Hello, and thanks for joining this webinar. So today's topic is going to be very interesting. This is about AI risk management. And yes, so let's just wait a couple of, maybe a minute or half a minute for everyone to join. And while we are waiting for other people to join, could you just let me know where you're calling from? I'm calling in from Zagreb, from Croatia. So if you can just let me know your city and the country where you're coming from, and if you join through Zoom, you can actually send this information through this Q&A pane that you will see in Zoom. If you joined through LinkedIn or through YouTube, you can actually send this through a chat message. Okay, while I'm waiting for your feedback, just a couple of notes here. So first of all, we are recording this webinar, and you'll be able to watch the webinar basically from the same page where you registered. So if you joined through Zoom, then you will actually, if you registered actually on Advisera website, you will see on the same page where you can actually you'll find there the recording as well. And if you joined through LinkedIn or YouTube, then you'll find the recording actually on the same page where you're watching the live streaming now. Okay, so I see people from Mauritius, great, thank you. Malaga, Spain, Helsingør, Denmark, okay, Netherlands, great, okay. Lots of places, lots of countries, this is great to hear. Belgium as well, London, this is I assume in England. Great, okay, good. Guatemala, Serbia, great, lots of people here. I'm really glad to hear. Okay, yeah, let me go on. Second thing is you'll be able to download this presentation deck, and at the end of the webinar I'll actually let you know where you can find the link to download the presentation deck. So just try to stick to the end of the webinar, and I'll tell you where to find it. Okay, a couple of more people from Houston, Texas, Illinois, USA. Okay, great. Good. So yeah, let me start now. So welcome to this webinar, which is about the basics of ISO 42001 risk assessment and treatment. And my name is Dejan Kosutic, and I'm the main ISO 27001 and ISO 42001 expert at Advisera. And Advisera is a company that makes compliance easy to understand and simple to use. And this webinar today will last approximately 50 to 60 minutes, depending really on the number of questions you'll have. And by all means, please do send as many questions as you want, and you can actually send the questions while I go through these slides. You don't have to wait for this Q&A session at the end. Of course, you can send also at the end if you want to. Okay, good. Now let me move on to the next slide. So why is this AI risk management important? Well, on one hand, it's important because I've seen, companies either care too much about AI risks, and basically they're saying, no, risks are too high. We don't want to use AI, I don't know, chatbots or whatever at all. Or, there is a very opposite reality as well, and that the senior management, wants to push this AI so hard that they don't really care about any risks. So you have this, I would say, strange situation where there is either too much let's say risk taking or no risk taking at all. And yeah, I think that neither of these approaches are good, and that actually I would say good dose of thinking about risks is always something that needs to be considered. Okay, in any case, in this webinar today, I'll show you what are the requirements from ISO 42001 for risk assessment and treatment, and also how to implement this risk management according to the standard. And this webinar is basically for beginners, right? So I'll explain some very basics. I'm not going to go into some, let's say, more complex scenarios or cases. And it's intended for consultants, it's intended for companies that want to go for ISO 42001, but basically it's intended also for any company that wants to introduce AI governance into their company. Okay, so one of my main points, actually this is the main point today, is really that risk management is really at the core of AI governance, which means that if you want to manage your AI in a proper way, you cannot avoid assessing and treating risks. So this risk management really becomes the most important thing around which the whole idea of revolving around which basically this idea is revolving around AI governance. So AI governance is really not possible if you don't want to do risk assessment and treatment properly. Good, so let's see the agenda for today. And by the way, if you like any of these topics, if you want me to focus on any of these topics, let me know through the chat window or through Q&A pane in Zoom. And then I'll try to spend a little bit more time during the webinar if you want me to focus on anything here. Just briefly, I'll go why is this risk management important, what is the process of risk management, what are the elements of risk assessment, or basically the methodology, how to identify assets and what are these assets actually in the context of AI systems, what kind of risk sources you have to take into account, what kind of consequences you have to take into account, how to actually connect the risks to this AI system lifecycle, and what is AI system lifecycle at all, how to assess the level of impact and likelihood, and finally how to treat the risks, and also I have one slide how to connect these controls to particular risks. So lots of things to cover. So I'll be a little bit quicker today, so I really want to go through all of these slides. But again, you'll have the access to the recording, and we'll also share lots of links with you so that you can actually study, so to say, in peace, whatever piece of information I give to you today. Okay, good. So as I already mentioned, this AI governance is basically the best way to, I would say, manage risks and to decrease these potential negative consequences of AI. And of course, the whole idea of AI governance is to introduce trustworthiness into AI, because this trust is a crucial, I would say, element for companies to really start using AI for lots of other things that they're not using still. And if we want to simplify this AI governance, then there are two main components in this AI governance. First is this risk management or risk assessment and treatment, and then introduction of various controls to decrease these risks. Of course, it's a very simplified way of looking at AI governance, but nevertheless, these are really the two most important things. Now there are two standards that actually explain into more detail risk assessment and treatment. So ISO 23984, as you see in the slide. This is the standard that is focused specifically on AI risk management. So if you want to learn more details, then you can purchase that standard and read it. And by the way, most of my presentation today will be based on this ISO 23984. And of course, when it comes to implementation of controls, ISO 42001 does provide this Annex A with a list of controls. By the way, it's in that regards is the same as ISO 27001, but ISO 42001 also provides Annex B, and this Annex B is really a guidance on the implementation. So if you're already in ISO 27000 series of standards, then you know that there is this also ISO 27002. This standard 002 is actually a guidance for the implementation of controls from ISO 27001. In 42001, you actually do not have this separate standard. This implementation guidance is actually included in the standard in the form of Annex B. Okay, good. I'll actually, and by the way, during this presentation, you'll notice that I mentioned very often ISO 27001, because there are many kind of similar things between risk management in ISO 27001 and 42001, so you'll get an idea of what are the kind of similarities and differences. Okay, so by the way, when I prepared for this webinar, I also studied this NIST AI risk management framework. This is a document from US NIST organization, and it's also quite useful. And basically, it also focuses on, you know, how to organize AI governance. It doesn't really provide too many details about how to perform risk management. It's more about governance. Yeah, in any case, it's also a useful document to kind of understand, you know, what this AI governance is all about. Anyway, if you want to learn about 42001 in more detail, we'll share now a link with you to this free download. It's called Comprehensive Guide to ISO 42001. You can see this link now in the in the chat window. And if you joined the webinar through Zoom or through YouTube, you can simply click this link and it will open right away in your browser. If you joined through LinkedIn, then because of some limitations in LinkedIn, you actually have to copy the URL and then paste it into your browser to open it. Another link that we'll share with you is this link to this YouTube video. It's called What is ISO 42001? This is a YouTube video that I recorded, and if you want to learn in this video format, then take a look at this. There is also another webinar that, another video, a YouTube video that I recorded. It's called AI Governance Basics, a simple explanation and real-world examples. So if you want to take kind of a look at AI governance, not strictly from 42001 perspective, but from, let's say, a perspective of not related to any particular standard, then you can take a look at this this video as well. Good. Now let's move on to the next slide, and this is basically what is the process of risk management. And by the way, if you watched my webinar about ISO 27001 risk management, you'll see exactly the same process of 5 steps. So there is no difference whatsoever. So this is one of the big similarities between 42001 and 27001. So first of all, in 42001, you have to define what is the risk assessment methodology. In other words, you have to describe how you're going to assess the risks so that this process is well defined, so that everyone understands how it needs to be done. The second step is actually to perform a risk assessment. So basically to find out where the risks are and to evaluate how big these risks are, so using these scales, and I'll explain all the details in the next couple of slides. And then you have to treat the risks and basically find out the ways for reducing or controlling these risks. And we'll share now with you a couple of links. First of all, we'll share this article about ISO 27001 risk assessment and treatment. I know this is not about 42001. Unfortunately, we still don't have an article about 42001 risk management, but you can still learn a lot from, let's say, from the concepts of 27001 risk management. This is why we share this link. Second, we'll share a link to this free download. It's a matrix of differences, similarities and differences between 27001 and 42001. So that you can actually see, clause by clause, what exactly, how they map and what is similar and what is different. And there is also a link, you'll see now a link to this video, which also does the same thing. It actually explains the differences between 27001 and 42001. So again, you can take a look at these materials. All right, then the fourth step according to 42001, is this statement of applicability. Again, exactly the same requirement as in 27001. So basically, it's something that the requirement there is actually that you list all the Annex A controls and then define which controls are applicable and which controls are not applicable. And by the way, I see a question here from Jay. Does 42001 has similar Annex A controls? And the answer is no. So the controls from 42001 are very different from the ones in 27001. 27001 has 93 controls, 42001 has 38 controls. And one of the slides at the end of the presentation, I'll show you actually the structure of these controls. Anyway, statement of applicability, the same purpose, the same structure. I mean, you have to show which controls are applicable, which are not, what is the justification, what are the related risks. Everything is the same like in 27001, except, again, the controls. Lastly, you have to create this risk treatment plan. Again, the same thing as in 27001. You have to plan your implementation. You have to provide, define which resources, which people, what are the goals that you want to achieve, these kind of things. Okay, we'll share now a couple of more links. First one is about a YouTube video which displays these ISO 42001 clauses and structure, so you can learn more about how 42001 is structured. Also, you'll see a link to an article about statement of applicability. If you don't know in general what it means, you can see this. It's an article about 27001, but again, exactly the same things you can apply to 42001. And you'll see also another video about statement of applicability on YouTube. So you can actually take a look at all of these materials. Good. Jay is asking, how about the clauses? Does it have similar clauses? Yeah, please do download this matrix of 42001 versus 27001. You'll see exactly how they compare. Okay, good. Now let's move on to the next slide, and this is basically how we actually, what are the mandatory elements according to ISO 42001, and basically how you build your risk assessment methodology. So basically the methodology is a document which describes which elements you need to have and how you implement them. So first of all, you need to have this risk identification. In other words, you need to list the risks in some way. A second way that is mandatory is that you have to assess the level of impact, and the third element is that you have to assess the level of likelihood, so how likely is a particular risk going to happen, and then you also have to define what is the acceptable level of risk. And basically so far it's almost the same as in 27001. 27001 also requires to define risk owners. Here there is no such requirement, but again everything else is almost the same. And then you'll see a couple of these light blue or gray kind of areas here. And basically here I've displayed a potential way to identify risks. Now ISO 42001 does not say how you need to identify the risks. And this is basically where I was reading through this other standards about risk management, AI risk management, and that other standard really suggests you a couple of ways that you can do it. And as you can see, I listed here, a suggested way of listing AI assets, and then listing risk sources, and then basically listing consequences that could happen, and then afterwards putting this in the context of AI system lifecycle. So this is, I would say, one approach to do it, but it's not mandatory according to 42001. And again, I'll show you in the next couple of slides how to do it. And then finally, what is mandatory is to determine the level of risk. Again, 42001 does not say how you can actually determine the level of risk, but very often this is either a multiplication of impact and likelihood, or when you actually add impact plus likelihood. Whatever of these approaches is fine. All of these approaches are good. And yeah, just to mention that this risk assessment approach is completely aligned with ISO 31000. ISO 31000 is the let's say top level standard for enterprise risk management, and it covers let's say basic principles for managing any types of risks. So AI risks, security risks, business continuity risks, financial risks, market risks, whatever. We'll send this link to an article which explains what is this ISO 31000, so you can see this in the link in the chat now. Okay, now let's see what is the how do you list actually these assets, right? So on the high level, you would typically list AI systems, right? So you have an AI system which performs a certain role. AI system could be, let's say, ChatGPT, right? Or Claude. ChatGPT is from OpenAI, Claude is from Anthropic, so these are AI systems. Or if you want to break down these AI systems, then you can actually break them down into several elements, okay? So for example, you would have AI models which are behind. Let's say latest model from OpenAI is this GPT 5.4, right? Latest model from Anthropic is this Opus 4.6. So these are AI models which stand behind these AI systems, behind these chat applications. Then you have data, right? Most importantly, training data based on which these AI models are trained. Then you have AI infrastructure. So for example, all these servers or GPUs, storage, obviously, deployment environments, and so on. Software components, this could be various AI applications, APIs, monitoring tools, and so on. External AI services, this could be external APIs that you're using for various purposes. External, let's say, services, again, from I don't know, Google Gemini or Anthropic, and so on. You might have also certain human roles like data scientists, reviewers, AI developers, and so on. So the point is, you have, I would say, two approaches to list your AI assets. The first one is to list only AI systems as a kind of the integrated asset with all of these things together, or you can actually break down your assets into these components if you want some more, I would say, detailed or better results. There is also a video that I created that I recorded on YouTube. It's called How AI Systems Work from Inputs to Outputs with some examples. So if you want to learn really, how actually AI systems, work, and it's really when you throw into it something as an input, how do you get actually this output? If you want to, learn on this technology and I would say approach, you can take a look at this video. All right, now after you have assets, then you should basically think about what are the risk sources, or in other words, what is the cause of the risk. Now here actually you have, I would say, a help from ISO 42001 Annex C3. So when you open this Annex C3, you have a suggestion of a couple of risk sources. Again, these are not kind of exclusive. These are not. It's not a definite list of risk sources. These are only suggestions. There can be many others, but here for this purpose, I'll just go through these 7 or 8 that are listed there. So complexity of environment, when basically AI operates within big systems with lots of elements, then you obviously have this risk source. Lack of transparency and explainability, when you actually don't know how AI systems work, because they have these billions of parameters and you don't really know how actually AI reached a certain output. Level of automation, this is especially important with AI agents where they act autonomously or semi-autonomously, and then they can actually create some problems. In other words, this is obviously a source of risk. Then risk sources related to machine learning, and this is especially important with regards to quality of training data, because the quality of training data actually determines also the quality of outputs, and this could also be a source of data poisoning. So this is also something to take into account. System hardware issues, right? If you're running your AI system on a certain server, there could be simply hardware issues. System lifecycle issues. I'll speak about system lifecycle in a couple of slides, so you'll see there what I mean. Technology readiness. This technology is still, I would say, most of this technology is not mature. So you can't really say for sure how it will behave under different circumstances. So this is also a source of risk. Anyway, again, this is not exhaustive, let's say, list. There can be many other sources of risk. Now let's try to connect things together. So for example, you have a risk of hallucinations, right? So hallucination, basically this means that you actually have wrong answer which sound right, like right answers, but they're simply wrong. And this, you could connect actually this to when we think about assets, this is related to AI models, And when you think about the risk sources, this is like a lack of explainability, right? This is so when you connect actually these two things, the asset AI model and lack of explainability, one of the risks that you get actually is this hallucinations. Another risk is bias, right? Bias basically that the AI systems gives you outputs which are biased towards let's say one group of people or something like this. And for example, that you have an AI system which approves loans, okay, and then it prefers let's say people from a certain neighborhood over some other neighborhood, right? Or maybe people from one ethnical group over some other ethnical group. Obviously this is also a big problem. This kind of bias you could actually relate to asset data, right? You take the data as an asset and then machine learning as the risk source. So again, when you connect these two things together, one of the risk that you can actually have is bias. Then you could have data leakage, right? If you input certain data into the AI systems, there is a danger that AI models will use this data for training, which means that this data then could be displayed to some other users. Again, this asset which is related to data leakage is, let's say, software component, various software components, or let's say user interface, because these user interfaces might not actually prevent you from entering personal data. And on the other hand, the risk source is here, let's say, the level of automation. Again, the more automated the systems are, the more likely they will actually have an output which is simply not, let's say, appropriate. Or you could have a risk of building biological weapons, that someone is using AI model to let's say come up with a formula on how to build a biological weapon, right? This is also unfortunately one of the risks. And again, when you take a look at through this framework of an asset, you would have an asset as AI model, and you would have the risk source technological readiness. So basically the technology which is not mature. So yeah, there again, when you list these assets and risk sources, try to combine them, and then you'll actually start understanding what kind of risks they can produce or cause. Okay, now yeah, let me see what we can share with you here. Yeah, okay, so we'll share a link to a video which I recorded about how this machine learning works. So you can actually take a look at this video just to understand what are here the how does this really work, and also how these GPTs work. So basically generative pre-trained transformers. There is also another video which explains that. It's also an interesting video just for you to understand how basically how ChatGPT actually provides you with the answer. Good. Yeah, okay, I have a question from Nazir. What about the RAG risks? So basically RAG is when you're using your own data to basically provide inputs to an AI system, so that the AI system has context. Again, this is something that you can connect in this framework, related again to data and to basically various sources here. So you could have simply, again, a level of automation which might use this data in an inappropriate way, complexity. So there are many, let's say, ways to figure out how RAG actually fits into this framework here. Okay, question from Jay. How would you actually assess the bias? What steps would you take to find out the bias? Sorry if not already explained. So again, you should list the assets first, and then list these causes here, and then try to make connections and really see what fits with which kind of, so which asset fits with which kind of source of risk here. And if you find actually the connection, then you try to figure out what the negative consequence could be. So again, I have given here and explain a suggestion for a bias as a combination of data and machine learning, but of course there might be some other combinations which would produce bias here. Okay, moving forward, let me The next step is actually to try to think about in terms of consequences. So what can actually happen? And so what ISO 42001 requires you is that you actually list consequences in terms of the organization itself, individuals and societies. Okay. So again, let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say that if you have hallucinations as a risk, then the consequences could be for the organization that is, let's say, an AI provider. So if, let's say, I don't know, ChatGPT has too many hallucinations, this will then create problems of reputation and trust for ChatGPT, meaning for OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. Also, the consequences of hallucinations could be for individuals, for if they're acting as AI customers. So if individuals are using the results of ChatGPT and there are some hallucinations there, there might be some very wrong decisions that are made, or this individual could make some then very wrong decisions based on this, based on these results, based on these hallucinating results. If you use bias as a risk, basically the consequences could be for the organization itself. Again, if this is a bank which uses algorithm for loans which is biased, then it could have consequences because it's obviously making wrong decisions. But also for individuals, if individuals are using these results, they could also be, impact could be also for individuals. And so on. For building these biological weapons, then obviously the consequences is for societies as a whole, right? And then, you might have various impacts on various things. So reputation and trust, as I mentioned already, if too many hallucinations, health and safety, obviously biological weapons, and so on and so on, environment costs. Yeah, when it comes to cost, you could have a cost of penalties or litigation or, repairing the damage. You have lost time that people are, simply spending, repairing whatever damage was done through AI and so on. I mentioned also this concept of trustworthiness and why is it important. And here you will see the link to a YouTube video which explains about what is this trustworthiness, why is it important. Okay, Jay is asking, why exactly are you referring to by hallucinations? Hallucination is basically a term saying that if you ask something to ChatGPT and it provides you with answer, and this answer sounds very, let's say, convincing. Let's say that you ask ChatGPT how many controls are there in ISO 42001 and it tells you it's 40, right? This is a hallucination because the right answer is not 40, the right answer is 38. So this is basically a hallucination. Okay. Good. Now let's move on to how is this, how are these risks related to this AI system lifecycle? And first of all, what is the AI system lifecycle? Basically, AI system lifecycle is a fact that actually the risks or the AI systems are not kind of static. They go from, as you can see here, from inception, then design and development, then verification and validation, then they are deployed, then they're go into this operation and monitoring phase. Then they are evaluated, and then they are finally retired or replaced. So the point is that whenever you have an AI system, and by the way, it's for any other software system as well, but here the focus is obviously on AI systems. You do not have the same risks for AI system, let's say in the inception phase or design and development phase, as well as in, I don't know, operation or monitoring phase. So the point is here that if you want to, let's say, even more precisely pinpoint all the risks, then you could actually review your AI system through all its applicable, I would say, AI system lifecycle phases. So just to give you a couple of examples. So hallucinations can actually, to actually assess the level of hallucinations, to assess the risks of hallucinations, you actually have to take into account the design and development phase, because this is actually where you collect all the data, okay? but also verification and validation phase, because this is actually where you have to find out if this system is good enough before putting it into production. When speaking about bias, you also have to take into account the design and development phase, because this is where you obviously use your training data to train the AI system, but you also have to take into account operating and monitoring phase, because this is obviously somewhere where the you have to somehow check what the system is outputting. So the point here again is that you find out what are the relevant stages in this life cycle, AI system life cycle, and then consider the risks for each of these. Okay, yeah, we'll share also now with you this video about that explains these 7 stages in the AI system life cycle. So if you want to learn about these stages, you can take a look at this video. Okay, now and then basically you come up to the step where you actually have to assess the level of impact and likelihood. And this is typically done by using scales, okay? And as you can see, for example, you could have a scale of high, medium, and low, or you could have a scale of very high, high, medium, low, and very low. It really depends on you. And basically you're using the same scales for impact and for likelihood. And yeah, how do you actually assess the level of impact? For example, you have to think about these consequences. So if you go a couple of slides back, when you think about these consequences, you have to think about really how important, how big these consequences would be, and then you can say whether this is high, medium, or low. When you think about likelihood, you should be thinking about how many controls are already implemented there. So if there are no controls whatsoever, then obviously the likelihood is not going to be low. It might be, I don't know, medium or high. So one parameter is really the level of existing controls. The other one is really some kind of historic data, or basically by simply following the let's say current events worldwide and seeing if similar AI systems are having similar problems. And then when you actually put all of this together, you get something like this. This is an example of a risk assessment table, right? So here in the first column, you actually see the asset. Okay, so let's say that this is AI model. Source, lack of explainability. Okay, consequence to organizations and individuals, and then the risk is hallucination. Okay, so basically this is how this table could look like. When I think about it now, it would be better to have this risk actually as a third column. So asset, source, risk, and then consequence, but it's not so important now. And here the impact, let's say, if we take 3 levels, so basically low, medium, and high, 3 would be high here. So this would be, let's say, high consequence. Likelihood would be, let's say, 2. This would be medium. And then if we use addition as the method of calculating the risk, 3 plus 2 would be 5. And then asset would be data, source would be machine learning, risk would be bias, and this would be a consequence to organization and individuals. Impact would be low, likelihood medium, and the risk would be a level of 3. Software component, level of automation is the source, a risk is data leakage, consequences for organizations and for individuals. This is high, this is medium, risk level 5. And you might have, let's say, AI model, technological readiness, building biological weapon, consequences for society, obviously very high impact, very low likelihood, so 1, and risk of 4. So this is basically one way that you can actually, create this risk assessment table and basically identify all of your risks and also address or assess the impact and likelihood. Okay, I know that this is a lot, but I'll actually show you a couple of courses that we have on Advisera website. And here you have these courses around 42,001. There is this foundations course, which is basically, the best for, let's say, the people who are members of the project team, maybe senior management, mid-level management. There is this ISO 27001 internal auditor course, which is obviously for internal auditors, lead auditor course, so for people who want to be professional auditors, or a lead implementer course for implementers. So basically we developed these 4 courses, and they're in structure very similar to ISO, our ISO 27001 courses. Anyway, what I wanted to show you here is when you go for a particular course, you can see this curriculum. And there, for this foundations course, you have these 3 modules. And the most interesting module here is really about risk management, okay? Because here you have several lessons which explain into more detail everything that I was speaking today in this webinar. So how to set up, okay, what does this mean to address risks and opportunities, how you actually set up the whole process, how do you define the methodology, how you identify the risks, how you evaluate and analyze and evaluate. Basically, this is impact and likelihood. What is the risk treatment and statement of applicability, and then it goes also for this AI system impact assessment. So you can see the details. Of course, the rest of the course is about each and every clause, right? So I don't know, clause 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. So basically, there is a lesson for each and every clause in the standard. This module 1 is more generic. It basically speaks about, general objectives for AI, introduction to this AIMS, implementation according to PDCA cycle, implementation as a project, and so on. There are also some more technical lessons around understanding machine learning, understanding neural networks, main components of AI system lifecycle, these kind of things. Okay, and by the way, you can enroll for free. You can go through all of these videos for free, and we charge only if you want to go for the certification. So if you don't want to certify it, you can actually go through the whole course without any payment. And yeah, we'll share now with you a link to where you can see actually all of these courses. Good. Okay, just to finish the story here. So you see that I calculated the level of risk here, and that these 5s and 4, they are actually in red, and the 3 is green. What does this mean? When you set the acceptable level of risk in your methodology, you have to define what is acceptable and what is not. So in this hypothetical example, we have said that the level of risk of 3 is acceptable, but 4 and 5 and potentially 6 is not acceptable. Okay. And this is important because then you actually go to the next phase, and this is risk treatment. And in this risk treatment, you treat only unacceptable risk. You are not dealing with acceptable risk, because this would mean that you're actually dealing with all the risks, which would be obviously too expensive. So my next slide is about risk treatment. And typically you would have, you might have several options, but let's say 5 options are the most common. So the first most common option is really decreasing the risk. And basically this means that you are applying certain controls from the Annex A, and I'll show you these controls in the next slide. The next option is to avoid the risk. For example, you're simply stopping to use AI for a certain purpose if the risks are simply too high and if there is no other reasonable option. The next option is really to take or increase the risk, right? Because you might actually have a certain risk, but actually the opportunities because of this risks are simply too good, right? And in this case, you're saying, yes, I take this risk. I will even increase this risk because I want to pursue an opportunity. This is also a valid way to look at the risks. And by the way, speaking of AI technology, it's moving very, very fast. And, simply trying to, let's say, manage each and every risk is not really realistic. In some cases, the organization will have to take some risk because if you want to move fast, then you will actually have to, let's say, allow for certain AI risks to happen or to potentially happen if you really want to kind of keep pace with the competitors. Of course, I'm not saying that you have to, pursue each and every risk, but some risks selectively and, knowingly, this is certainly allowable according to the standard. Sharing risk, basically this is where you share a risk with a third party. An example here it would be, let's say that you have some risks related to your AI infrastructure, let's say availability of servers, and then you can actually share this risk with, I don't know, a cloud provider, which guarantees you a certain uptime, okay? This is, let's say, a way to share a risk with a third party. And then you can also retain the risk. Sometimes you will hear the term accept the risk. So you can retain the risk if let's say mitigation is too expensive. So if you see, let's say that the biggest potential damage from a risk is, let's say, I don't know, $20,000, and the mitigation itself would cost $50,000, then obviously it doesn't make sense to treat this risk. In this case, you simply retain the risk because the damage is far lower than the mitigation costs. Okay, now if you choose this decrease the risk, then you actually have to apply various controls, okay? And these controls, as I mentioned, there are 38 controls in the Annex A of ISO 42001. And again, if you when you purchase the standard, you will see all of these controls. But the point is, I don't have really time to go through all of these 38 now in this webinar, because this would be an additional 2 hours. But actually these 38 controls are listed in these 9 sections. Policies related to AI, internal organizations, resources for AI systems, and so on. For example, you can see this A6 is about AI system lifecycle. So there are a couple of controls for different stages in lifecycle. Data for AI systems, obviously this is related to training data. How you treat interested parties, how you use AI systems when they're in production, also how you manage customers and third parties. So as you can see, there are numerous controls there, which then you can pick for, let's say, for when appropriate. So for example, if you have hallucinations, okay, then you can actually select controls from AI system lifecycle and also from this use of AI systems, okay. If you have bias, then you will probably use controls related to data for AI systems. If you have, building biological weapons, then you'll probably use controls from all of these, from most of these controls, but especially controls related to AI system lifecycle, and so on. So this is then where you actually have to become creative and think through what is the best way to select these controls. Okay, of course, once you start writing, let's say, rules for implementing these controls, you'll have to write various documents. And we'll share now a link to an article which suggests which kind of documents, actually it lists what are the mandatory documents according to 42001, and also suggests a couple of, let's say, non-mandatory documents. So you'll see this when you open this link. And yes, if you want to really learn about the details of each and every control, again, I'll show you how this looks like in the course. So let me now switch to this lead implementer course. And if you go for this curriculum, you will actually see the same first 6 modules as in foundations course, but you will see also these additional 6 modules which are specific for lead implementer course. But if I go for this module 6, which by the way, you'll find this module 6 exists in all of our 42001 courses. Here you will see actually lessons for each and every section of these controls. So if you want to learn, and just to mention, so this each of these lessons actually explain each and every control. So if you want to learn about these controls, then please do sign up for any of these courses, and you will actually hear the explanation. So again, for example, here you have this Annex 8.7 data for AI systems, and there are something like 6 controls or so, and you will, if you go for this lesson, you will see an explanation for that. Okay, going back to my presentation, yeah, you can see now this link to this lead implementer course in the chat window. Good, so let me go through a conclusion, and then I'll go through some remaining questions. So, if you follow this kind of a method for assessing risks, you'll probably find some risks that you never thought about earlier. And of course, this will help you set up your AI governance in a much better way, because if you're not aware of some risks, then you're not going to be able to fix them, right, or prevent them. But also, you know, be open to these about taking risks. Really, you don't have to prevent each risk. You have to be open and allow some things, some risks to happen. So again, this is a fast-moving technology, and don't be too conservative here, because you don't want your AI governance really to prevent the development. You have to make some kind of balance between these two, let's say, needs. And of course, again, please do take a look at these courses to learn more details. And if you want to schedule a call with our training expert, here you will see now this link for his calendar. So if you want to learn about, you know, the details, and if you want an explanation of what are the differences, then please by all means get in touch with him. Also, if you want to get if you want to purchase these exams for several of your employees, we provide discounts, so you can also discuss this with my colleague. Okay, great. Let's move on now to this Q&A session. So yeah, if you have any questions, please by all means, please do send your questions now. Okay, so before I start answering your questions, just a couple of notes. So first of all, feel free to reach out to me directly. You'll see my email on the screen now, so if you want, you can send me any question directly. Second, you can follow me on LinkedIn and YouTube. So on LinkedIn, I publish regularly, basically new things, new materials, news about cybersecurity governance and AI governance. So if you want to keep in touch or keep up to date, then please follow me on LinkedIn. And on YouTube, as already mentioned, I publish lots of videos about ISO 42001, AI governance, of course, about cybersecurity governance as well. And third thing I wanted to let you know is that my next webinar will be about how to sell ISO consulting services. So if you're a consultant, this will be, I would say, quite handy. And in this webinar, I'll explain, which channels to use to find prospects, and also which methods to use to convert these prospects into clients. So you'll see also this link for upcoming webinars. Good. Now let me go through questions. So a couple of questions I received before the webinar, so I'll first go through them. So Tony was asking, where does ISO 42001 sit with respect to NIST standards? So as I mentioned, NIST did publish this AI risk framework. And yes, I mean, it's, I would say, similar as in with 27001. NIST does publish lots of these standards. ISO obviously publish lots of these standards, but ultimately ISO 27001 is now, I would say, more popular, or much more popular than let's say NIST cybersecurity governance framework. So I expect a similar thing to happen with ISO 42001. In time, I think that ISO 42001 will become world's leading AI governance standard. Again, the same as what happened to ISO 27001. Okay, Gerian was asking, how does ISO 42001 support demonstrable compliance with the EU AI Act, especially for high-risk AI systems? Are mapping documents available? So we do not have any mapping documents for that. I'm planning to do an article on this. I do have a webinar, I do have a video which explains EU AI Act, so you can take a look at my YouTube profile. But to answer your question, so if your company does operate a high-risk AI system, then I would say ISO 42001 becomes very, very useful, because there are requirements for high-risk AI systems. It's like 30 or so articles in the EU AI Act which relate to high-risk AI systems. And for most of these articles, you can actually use ISO 42001 to help you comply. So Without any detailed analysis, I would say 42001 can help you, with, I don't know, 80, maybe 90% of these requirements in EU AI Act. Okay, let me see some questions that came in during the webinar. So Nazar was asking, what about the risk appetite? How we calculate it based on a controls formula? Risk appetite is not calculated. Basically, risk appetite is the same thing as the acceptable level of risk. What you can actually calculate is the remaining or residual risk, and basically you calculate the residual risk in the same way by using the same scales for impact and likelihood. The only difference is that you actually assess the impact and likelihood taking into account the controls that you will implement, right? So you assess the level of impact once you control once controls are implemented, and also the level of likelihood. Okay, Ruth is asking, there are so many links shared. Can you please add all of them in the follow-up email after the webinar? Yes, we will do so. So if you joined through the webinar, if you registered on the Advisera website, then we have your email and we'll send you this through email. David is asking, why use 5 as a scale, as many people will sit on the fence and choose the 3? I recommend 4x4 as they have to make a decision. The thing is like this, you can use 10x10, okay? But the thing is, okay, first of all, the standard doesn't really specify what kind of scales to use. The smaller the scales, the easier will it be to assess these risks, the quicker it will be. Okay, if you use 4x4, it will take a little bit more time than actually using 3x3. So I don't have a concrete answer here, so I'm trying to simplify things as much as possible, and if simplification here is the goal, then 3x3 would be the best way to do it. Clartia is asking, do you need to take your applicable controls into account for determining the impact? You do so for likelihood. Always when you actually assess the impact and likelihood, you should take into account the existing controls. In most cases, existing controls will impact only the likelihood. In some rare cases, the existing controls will also affect the impact. Okay. So in any case, you always have to take into account existing controls when assessing the level of impact and likelihood. Pascal is asking, it looks there is a lot of subjectivity to give to these marks, correct? Yes, by the way, this is called qualitative risk assessment. What I did not show you is quantitative risk assessment, which would be almost impossible to do. So qualitative is basically the only one that is feasible. And by the way, it's not only for AI risk assessment, it's also for a cybersecurity risk assessment. It's in 99% of the cases you use this qualitative risk assessment because quantitative is either impossible or simply, much more expensive than your whole revenue in the company. So it's only the matter of feasibility here. So yes, you are depending on subjective, I would say, decisions made by people within the company. Jay is asking, how come lack of explainability as a source? Just looking for some clarification. Well, basically, if you don't know how actually AI came to a certain conclusion or how it came to a certain output, then basically it's a risk because you can't control it, right? And so when you can't control something, then this is a source of risk. Anthony is asking, is risk tolerance set per risk source or overall? Risk tolerance or acceptable level risk is set overall for the whole company. Hord is asking, oh, sorry, but yeah, you have lots of here. So if you can please send me this question through email, it would take me at least 3 minutes only to read your question. Rolando, can you please explain what is hallucination? Okay, I already did this. Clarty is asking, is this ISO standard only applicable to companies that develop an AI tool or also to companies that use a custom-made for the company AI tool that was developed by suppliers? To both. So basically the standard is available to AI producers, AI developers, but also AI customers, okay? Because all of these companies have certain risks. Obviously, those that are developing the AI systems have very different risks from AI customers, so that they're using. but still it's applicable to all of these. Colette is asking, do you know how many companies are certified to 42001? Currently very low. It's not many. I don't think it's more than 1,000. Whereas, I don't know, for 27001 it's over 70,000 now, and for, I don't know, 9001 it's already over 1 million. Henrik is asking, is the 𝗲𝗿𝗏 course accepted by certification bodies, so you can perform certification audit for a certification body? You should actually ask them and see what their requirements are. And basically, and just to mention here, now we are in the process of certification our courses or accreditation our courses with 𝗥𝗲𝗲 Global. So this will be completed in about 1 month from now. So in April, you will see that, for example, our ISO 42001 lead auditor course will be certified or accredited by 𝗥𝗲𝗲 Global. And this will, I would say, add additional weight with certification bodies where you potentially want to work with. Okay, great. I think these are all the questions, so I think I answered all of them. So just a few words before I finish. So as I mentioned, this 1 hour webinar was really, too short to go into details of each and every potential risk or each and every potential control. So for that purpose, please do take a look at our courses. And yeah, in about 10 minutes, we'll publish the PDF presentation deck from this webinar. And you'll see the link to download it in the same page where you actually are with the are you watching the webinar now. So for example, if you watch this webinar through YouTube or through LinkedIn, just leave the page open and come back in about 10 minutes and you will see the link for downloading this presentation deck on the same page in the comments section. And we also repost all these links that we shared during the webinar in this same comments, so you can actually go through all of these links again. If you joined through Zoom, then we'll send you all of these links through email, and we'll send you this email by tomorrow morning. And yeah, you'll also see a link for a short survey. It's only 3 questions, and I would really appreciate if you could answer this survey just to let me know how I was doing in the webinar today. And this would be all. Thank you very much for your participation, and I hope you have enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.